Roll call. Here we go. Bonnie Elliott.
Here.
Ken McMillan.
Here.
Eric Peterson.
Here.
Vincent Wood. Absent. At this point, we will move forward to open public comment for anything that's not on the agenda, if anyone would like to speak. Trevor?
Thank you, Chair. Your secretary is going to be passing out my written comments, and this is in regard to what some of you will recall, the wall issue down at 501 North Salsapuedes. And it was started as an investigation of what we thought was a structurally inadequate wall, A and B. And the board here asked that an investigation be made by another structural engineer, and that's still ongoing. And here we are 2 months later, and the Jardín de las Rosas project has built a retaining wall that is not adequate. And that's what this letter and the exhibits are, to let the board know, and of course let the structural engineer who's investigating this have some idea what's going on. And I believe that the board should try to press this issue a little bit faster if we can, because the wall that has been constructed is not adequate for trespass or noise control with the adjacent Catholic Charities property. So I'd ask you to read the letter, and if there's any questions, I'll wait, and if there's a break where you're at, I'll be happy to answer any questions you'll have.
Great. Thank you very much. Next public speaker, James?
Greetings, board. For those of you who don't know me, I think I see a new face. I'm Dr. Jim Marston. I'm a research scientist looking at trying to increase access for people with disabilities. I'm on the Access Advisory Committee of the city and also 2 boards here in town that serve disabled people. So I have a couple general statements here. I reminded the board in the fact that before that they're the only group that I know of that has actually the right to take away civil rights and access rights to people with disabilities. So I want you to understand how important that is. And it's not just in one case, as of today or 2 months ago, the Sandman. In fact, on the Sandman project, they are now, other people are trying to get the same exemption that was granted. So this thing is just skyrocketing. And a decision here could go on for 40, 50, 100 years. So please make sure that you're not taking away rights of people. I had mentioned the last time I was here, which was 2 meetings ago, that somehow the rules that were passed do not let anyone have any input into this process except when they come to the meeting. And this is a good example that I got a lot of complaints about this particular project, which I won't go into, but I went down there, took pictures, took measurements and all that stuff, and somehow I had no right to give any access to you before the meeting. And that just seems like impossible, wrong. The disabled community should have a right to say, this affects me, and it should be in the report. So I hope that you can somehow understand that you are getting no input from the people who are directly affected by these decisions. And when I mentioned this to Andrew, he mentioned at the last meeting that one thing you could do is say we don't have enough information, and instead of passing or denying this appeal, you can also ask for it to be reheard later, which means then the disabled community could put some input into the files. So at least today, if you're going to somehow try to approve this type of thing, then I think you should ask for more information from other people. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Any other public comment? We will close then public comments. Move forward to approval of the minutes from 8/4/16. Are there any comments from the board from the minutes? And we need need a motion from the board.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed? Yeah. Motion carries. And we'll move on to item 1, which is 314 West Ortega.
Mr. Chair, actually, we do have an announcement that item has been withdrawn at the
Oh.
request of the applicant.
Oh.
Sorry about that. So
I'm sorry, which item was that? 314?
that would be item number 1,
1, Ortega.
Okay,
14
That's,
West Ortega.
thank you.
May I ask, is that going to come back, or is that,
Yes,
okay, just postponed?
just postponed,
Postponed.
unless the appellant chooses to withdraw the application.
Okay. Item number 2 is 28 Anacapa Street,
Yes.
which at this point, I'm going to have to recuse myself from this item.
Correct, you had
Yes.
indicated
Okay.
that. So, so actually, we were going to go ahead and, staff was going to go ahead and do an overview, and then I had asked Elizabeth Sorgman, our CASP certified access specialist, to just give a summary of some of the clearance items that are mentioned in the staff report, just for better clarification. My name is Lonnie Cassidy. I'm the plan check supervisor here at the City of Santa Barbara. I'll be sitting in for Andrew today. In the staff report, we did a summary of the permits that have been approved and constructed for this project, the overall project. Basically, in 2013, we had some exterior permitting requested and approved. And then in 2014, we had an application for improvements into the structure. 2015, actually July 16th, we had a tenant improvement application for the business that is currently in this suite. And we approved that without exterior dining or seating area. The exterior deck that was constructed is also accessible path and an egress path. Since March 2016, the brewery has been in the building and has been very successful. We did receive a complaint in June of 2016 for the illegal outdoor dining and encroaching into the required accessible path. In July 2016, we did receive an application that was submitted for the installation of fixed outdoor seating on the exterior deck for the Brass Bear Brewing. And because Brass Bear, I'm sorry. They were proposing to encroach into the required. Yes. They were proposing to encroach into the 48-inch path of travel and exit discharge, and we did not support that proposal. Our summary is that in reviewing this, that staff has consistently not supported having exterior seating on the deck because they were not able to demonstrate that they could provide the required accessible path or egress, and that we feel that approving a reduction would be setting a precedent for other businesses, and we're not supportive of doing that. At this time, I'd like to allow Elizabeth Sorgman to give a little bit of background about those required clearances.
A little bit of the history of the project, and we do have Curtis, who is the plans examiner here, if you have any questions regarding the history. It has a unique relationship with the city and the city parking lot in terms of having a ramp that takes you from the city parking and gives you access. And I think 2 or 3 years ago, City Council and maybe other members thought that this might be an entry into the funk zone. So there was some agreement between accessibility from the parking lot through this building, up the ramp, and using this pathway to direct lots of public, other public members to the funk zone. So this was being, at that point, that was how it was presented. And I think the original permit alludes to not being able to get an occupancy until that connection has been made. So at this point, the applicant is asked that we consider perhaps a hardship relative to site constraints. And given that this was a new deck that was being built, Andrew wasn't supportive of seeing that as something that was a site constraint because it had been built by the property owner. So in the report that Andrew provided, he gave you some code sections that give you what the minimum dimensions are for exterior routes. And he also wanted me to point out that an accessible route in ADA requirements would allow 36 inches, but California has deemed it to be 48, and it does differentiate between an exterior and an interior walkway. This is considered an egress balcony. It's not a sidewalk because it's not contiguous to the driveway. So it doesn't qualify as one of the exemptions for that particular code section that Don has cited. We are required to have 48 inches for the accessible route, not just for the businesses, for the other tenants that are in that area, but again, for the members of the public that are using the public city parking lot to gain access into the funk zone. There is a distinction in the DSA commentary that makes it really clear that walkways and sidewalks are viewed differently. So again, I don't believe that the code exception that Dawn is citing applies to her project because she is an egress balcony. And that requirement, we have requirements from the accessibility chapter of the code and also from egress requirements, chapter 10. So they're two distinct requirements that she's having to comply with. Does anyone have any questions?
I do.
Okay.
Was there an occupant load study done? And if so, what's the required width of the exit for egress or any type of egress?
I don't know that that was on the plans. I'm not sure. Maybe Don can answer that.
There is an occupancy load calculation on the plans, and the required exit from on the south side of the elevation was required to be 36-inch door, 32
Or for the other units as well in the facility?
for that unit. Each individual tenant had their own occupancy load, but there was
Were
no.
those occupancy loads calculated in the total for that exit, if that's an exit pathway?
No.
No.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question. I don't know if it's appropriate now or not. There is a next to the Breast Bear. There's a driveway, and it's one car driveway, and there you go around the back. There's accessible parking back there, but who in the world is going to use it? And once they get parked back there, how are they going to get out without all those people when there's people milling around? I mean, it's a mess. You know, I don't know about that. Thank you.
Do you want me to respond to that right now?
Or should I, is that a question? I have other comments to make and I'll wait. I didn't know.
Right, do you want me to step in as chair?
We need to go ahead and,
Oh, yeah.
if you have questions for staff,
Yeah.
and then allow the appellant to
Okay,
present their
sorry about that.
Finish their
Okay.
presentation.
But I think he's going to act as the chair.
Chair.
Because
You
he's,
can share it.
right.
I was just gonna,
Right.
I was gonna offer it because he's stepped
can't,
down
right.
to, and to say that, that I believe the city should finish their presentation.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Right, so if you do have
Sorry,
further
go ahead.
questions for city staff, then we can answer at that time and allow
All right.
We
Dawn
won't
to
allow-
present
yeah,
for
we
the
won't.
appellant.
Actually present first and then ask her questions.
Right.
Oh, great, thank you.
All right.
So Bonnie, did you have further questions for city staff?
No, I'll just wait.
Okay.
Got one, if you want to answer it. The one about the parking lot. But I
parking
can
lot?
probably answer it better because I know the history, so we can wait.
Yeah, we can, I mean, that isn't the issue before us, but we can certainly speak to the parking and the design of that.
Right.
You're probably, Dawn, better to do that.
All right, so if city is done presenting, then we'll go on with the appellant's presentation.
All right, my name is Dawn Sherry. I'm the architect for the project, and this is Seth Anderson, and his wife Lindsay. Seth.
I'll just remind you, just because you do speak a little quick like I do, that we have to speak for her to translate as
Okay,
well.
got it. So, that being said, the first thing I wanted to say is that there was a statement made in the staff report that you read, and it still hasn't been clarified. It alludes, it insinuates that 0 outside seats are allowed. There's one portion that's particularly actually underlined, and that's, it may be misleading because 4 seats are allowed per zone, per zoning ordinance for this particular property. There are a total of 9 seats allowed on the inside only. It's a small facility, and based on the number of parking spaces that we were, able to fit in the back, we could only have 9 seats on the inside. The city ordinance says that you cannot exceed, there's something in my throat, that you can't exceed 50% of the inside dining for the outside. So we are allowed by code to have 4 seats on the outside if we can find an approvable location for those seats. I wanted to make that clarification, and we have that backed up.
So what the report says regarding the zoning is, you feel is incorrect?
It's not that we feel it is incorrect, and we have written confirmation from Brenda Belts in planning, because Andrew requested that we get that.
And I'd like to confirm that what Don is saying is correct. And I think that Andrew posted an amended, revised comment online. So, and I think he may have sent that to you.
He did, but
Okay.
it doesn't amend that portion.
Yeah, I didn't see
Oh,
that in there.
okay.
And that
Forgot
was a
to
question I
amend that
actually had
portion.
beforehand, so.
All right. So yes, they're limited to a total of the 9 and the 4.
Yeah.
And
So the 4, if we could find a place for them, are allowed. It's just a matter of, which is why we're here today, is because it's a matter of finding out where we can put those. So I wanted to clarify that first. Then there was mention in the staff statement that there was a seating violation, and there were 2 types of seating violations. One, there was a couple of chairs that Seth and Lindsay had put out, full disclosure, and there was some fixed retractable seating that the property owner put all up and down the south walkway that was removed. So there were 2 separate issues. Those seats have been removed.
Is standing allowed then at this time?
That's a really good question, because people stand in sidewalks and walkways. So Elizabeth might be able to answer that more appropriately than me. It's
Chapter 10, under the exit discharge shall provide a direct and unobstructed access to a public way. So they have to maintain 48 inches. That's their clearance, that's their requirement.
So the problem with standing room is that people could stand next to, and we have more than 48 inches. I'm going to pull out the plan. You guys have it.
That's 6.
But we have more, and we have room for people to stand that wouldn't be obstructing the walkway. However, if you allow people to stand there, if somebody goes out and stands there, and somebody in a wheelchair wants to stand there too, we then don't have, once the wheelchair pulls up in that 30 inches that they need, then there's not 48 inches left over. That's why we have an issue here. So technically, somebody could stand there, but as soon as somebody wants equal access and they want to wheel up next to somebody standing there, then all of a sudden the reduced walkway, all of a sudden the walkway has to be reduced to 36 inches. That's the problem. So here's that area. You guys are all aware of it. Do we have a camera today?
No,
No? Okay.
just audio.
So here's that area as at the walkway, and then here's the do I need to do this? You guys all
It's the
know.
same as what we have, right?
Yeah, you guys have it.
Yeah, I think we're.
So Bonnie's right. The parking lot is very restricted. It works. I use it. Seth uses it. Lindsay uses it.
Could I-
People use it.
Can I ask, that's the required accessible parking for the
Yes.
unit, right? And it was developed in the 2015?
Yeah, yeah. Well, before 2015, the previous one in 2013 or,
That was developed in
When the-
August
when did the change of
2013.
Yeah.
occupancy occur?
The actual change of occupancy occurred in July 22nd, 2014 application, which was tenant improvements to the suites. And
Okay.
then
And
this current tenant came in July 16th of 2015. That space had previously been a hair salon.
Okay. Got it. So all of that was built to serve this function?
all of what? The parking lot?
Basically, yeah, that's, there's the public way is out front, right? The
Mhm.
Anacapa, and there's no accessible parking out there either, right?
No, just
No.
street parking, and there's no ADA parking on the street.
Okay.
So we were, just a little history, we were required when we did, because of the construction cost of the development and the upgrades that we were providing for the existing building, we were required to add the accessible path of travel. Previously, there was none. There was no, I think there might have been some stairs along the south elevation next to the driveway that weren't accessible to all the tenants. And so all these tenants, Unit A had stairs, Unit E had stairs, and then some of the other units had stairs facing south. So our proposal provided for an accessible path of travel from Anacapa Street and the rear parking lot, which was also developed. There was not a parking lot there before.
Right. it
We
would've been
provided
the
one.
priority list of things to provide for accessibility for
Right.
the project.
And in addition to that, the property owner wanted, and was, kind of initially spearheaded the ramp from the pony lot, the city lot, to his property, because we wanted this property to be a kind of an artery
Would you
to the
like
funk
to
zone.
discuss that a little bit, just so the agreement that was somewhat agreed to provide this as a conduit for?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that it was. The
Something
idea was that the property owner, Kim Hughes, wanted more access to Anacapa Street and to his property, and Jason Liggett, who owns 32 Anacapa, wanted access to his. He's under
Right.
development right now. He's in plan check. But that ramp was built. City got a permit. Kim paid for the plans, I
If
think.
I'm not mistaken, that ramp's got 36-inch ramps, or are they?
Well, I don't know if the ramp is 36 inches, but
No,
the ramp is.
Okay,
The walkway
Yeah.
is 36, and that's one thing I was going to bring up in my presentation, so I'll go ahead and say it now. And I'm talking too fast again. I'll stop you. And so,
Let us know, just because I've been asking you questions. Normally, we would just,
no,
you
it's
finish.
all part of my presentation anyway. It's fine, it's fine. As long as you don't mind the informal back and forth. So as a part of this, or maybe after, or, very closely at the same time this ramp was put in, a accessible path of travel was created, a new one from Cabrillo through the corner property, the Fish House, past that parking lot, past 22 Anacapa, and then connected to the ramp that goes into this property. It was approved as 36 inches.
that ramp was permitted as a part of, was a separate project? Or
Yes.
as a part of
that was a separate city project.
Separate city project.
And
Okay.
we do need to add that that's currently under enforcement. So the approval is currently under enforcement
Okay.
for that 36-inch walkway.
Oh, the city is,
Just ignore that I asked that question.
I didn't know that. So the city was contacted by somebody and there's a complaint?
Yes.
Okay. So there might be a complaint for the 36-inch walkway to Cabrillo. I don't know. But this,
Well, that's a
this
whole different
walkway,
set of,
okay,
yeah, that is
beside the point.
existing. Sidewalk.
So,
Oh, sorry.
so that was that issue. Hold on. Ramp
Mr.
was
Chair, I think
required.
just to move things along, maybe we can let Dawn finish her presentation, and
exactly.
then we'll go ahead and
Take any questions.
take any
if anybody's got
questions,
any
yeah.
questions. So are you about finished now?
I'm going through my list because I wanted to cross up the ones that I answered when you asked me
Okay.
questions. So one of the points I want to make is that Andrew came out and met with us, and we discussed whether or not he could view this path of travel as an existing condition and therefore qualify under the hardship. And it was mentioned in the staff report that it could not be considered an existing condition. My point is that we had an existing building, and I wanted everybody to understand the constraints that we were under when we first developed this property, because if we had had the ability to enlarge the walkway when we did the initial development, even before we knew Brass Bear was going to be a tenant, we would have done that. We have an extremely tight driveway, as Bonnie pointed out. There was no way we could get a path of travel along the north side of the building. We were required to put a very small planter that would allow plants to grow on our railing against the south railing along the driveway. And we made our walkway, this walkway, as wide as we could. And in fact, the planter even goes underneath a little bit to get enough growing space. But because that driveway is only 10 feet wide, and it was always 10 feet wide, well, I take that back. I don't think it was always 10 feet wide, but we took it to the limit, and we tried to get as big of a walkway as we could, knowing that we wanted this to be an outdoor area where people could not only access all the doors to all the suites, but it would provide a vibrancy to the building. So we made this walkway and this deck as wide as we could. It wasn't as if we had a choice to bring it in, and then we decided later, well, gosh, we blew it, and we should have made it a foot wider. If we'd had a foot more, then we could have done it. But for the design of the project and the safety of the driveway and needing to bring this railing back enough to where the windows of the car doors wouldn't hit the railing, we made this deck as wide as we could. So in my opinion, we do have a site constraint. No less of a site constraint than the walkway to Cabrillo would have, because they have a chain link fence at the property line. They have a 36-inch wide walkway, and then they have maybe another chain link fence, and then they have a parking lot. So, you know, it makes me wonder whether that walkway to Cabrillo couldn't have been 48, the chain link fence brought in, the parking lot been restriped to accommodate it. To me, it seems like the same. The answer that I was given by Andrew about the walkway was that was an existing site constraint.
Right.
So that's why I'm bringing this up. Is
Yeah,
that
I think there are differences also with regards to how the occupancy is handled and whatnot. But I just like to, I think what I'd like to do is give other members of the board an opportunity to ask any questions they may have if you're.
hold on, just so.
Because I think there'll be a little bit more dialogue.
And then there was, let's see, I just want to make sure that I handled everything. And I want Seth wanted to say a couple of things. And just the last point I wanted to make about the site constraints is that, you know, what I have to look at as an architect is how I would design this so that there could be seating, because we've got to get the 4 seats somehow. So my next question to myself is, what would I have to do to get the 4 seats? And so, you know, thinking ahead to the possibility of not getting the exception. And that would be removing a foot of the building off and bringing that back and building a new footing underneath the building that would accommodate the new south wall, and reframing the entire roof to accommodate that. And then I would have my foot, and I could bring back my 2 tables, because there's no way that I can do it out here. So that goes back to my statement about, well, okay, Andrew's telling me I don't have a site constraint, but now I'm looking at what do I have to do to an existing building, and it goes back to, God, the site's just too small. And then I think, well, I think I do have a site constraint. That's my point.
Okay.
Seth, did you want to say something?
I think. Why don't you pull the microphone up?
Oh, yeah,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
but, we'd love
Yeah,
to
I think
hear you.
Don definitely hit on all of our main points of why we think that this works. You know, for me, when I was reading this memorandum, I'm just reading the point the city is quoting that says, when because of right-of-way restrictions, natural barriers, or other existing conditions, the enforcing agency determines the compliance with the
Slow down. Huh?
compliance with the 48-inch clear sidewalk width would create an unreasonable hardship. The clear width may be reduced to 36 inches. So if we're just reading the code that's in this memorandum, I think the unreasonable hardship part, to me, obviously I'm biased, seems extremely clear that it is an unreasonable hardship to move the building wall that's 65 years old in a foot. That does seem unreasonable to me. And then I think on top of the fact that there's an already existing 36 inches examples of pathway to where we are, there's other examples throughout the city of 36 inches, I think also quoted in Don's response. From my point of view, seems like a reasonable thing to have what we're proposing. And obviously to us, it's extremely critical that we do have an outside presence. Otherwise, the wife and I wouldn't be investing the time and money to get the seats out there, since we removed the ones that we shouldn't have had out there. Our business has dropped over a third. And so if we want the restaurant to succeed and be open, we have to have an outside presence. So if this isn't what everyone is okay with, we definitely need a solution on what it is, or some guidance on what it is, because otherwise we won't be there for very long. So that's why we're here.
Thank you.
Just one last thing that Seth reminded me of is that if this was an interior access, and if it was enclosed and not open to the air, the requirement would be 36. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay. So with that said, do any of the board members have questions? Bonnie, I would love to hear from you.
Hi. I have some overall comments to make, and then some questions too. First, I want to say I went and visited. I went to the site over a year ago with a friend. They asked me to look at a couple of things because there was things that weren't accessible yet and whatnot. So I went and looked. And when we went on a Saturday afternoon, and it was an absolute zoo. The whole place, the whole funk zone was a zoo. It was a zoo with two-legged animals in it, full of people, and it was everywhere. It wasn't just this one place. It was just everywhere. It was people were not. There wasn't room on the sidewalks. Just generally, there was a vendor that shouldn't have been there at all between the restaurant and some of the two different restaurants. My question, I guess, is to the city: why is the funk zone allowed to do all this and be so disorganized and unsupervised? It was a horrible mess. I avoid parties like that like crazy. It's nuts. Fortunately, the friend I went with is over 6 feet tall, and he's big. He's huge. I wouldn't have gone down there by myself. It would have been absolutely dangerous. It was also the time when Uber was getting big in Santa Barbara. There was, and all these cars, I literally, I couldn't cross the street without him checking first because they couldn't see me. It was unbelievable. They're going zoom, 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 zoom. There's no speed. There's nobody paying attention to the speed limit. There is one, of course. It was a mess. The deck that you guys are talking about, it's a very nice deck. For anyone in a chair with a group of people standing it's insane. It's just it's nuts. You know, it's, I just, like I say, I avoid it
How
like
do you
the.
feel about having to get out of there in an emergency?
Well, that's another big issue. I'm a CERT volunteer. I'm pretty active with our local fire department. And that whole place, the whole funk zone area, is an accident waiting to happen. It's nobody is going to get out of there alive. No one. And no one's going to know where to go. No one's going to, they'll panic mostly. There's places to escape. They're not going to think well enough. No one who needs assistance at all is going to get it because they're going to get left behind. It's a mess, and I'm really, 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 really upset with the city about this. I did go down there again Saturday morning, this last Saturday at 8 o'clock. I was down there between 8 and 8:30. It was lovely down there. It was nice and quiet, lots of room. It was lovely. And when after 10:30 or so, it's a zoo. It is an absolute mess, and it would be the perfect storm. It's just, I am so against the funk zone, guys. I'm going to be the real bad guy in this. This is an absolute.
Let me try to.
mess.
Mr. Chair?
It's one of your analogies, yeah. and-
Actually, we skipped over public comment after the appellant
right.
was
Sorry,
done.
I'm-
And then, you know, city staff can speak to this item. As far as general items, that wouldn't be appropriate for us, nor are we
Okay, well, this item,
able to speak for the
yeah.
multiple departments that would need to address Bonnie's issues.
Okay.
So with that, let's take public comment. Jane Martinson, or Martson?
Okay, and then we do this.
Yeah. I never have any, my other board
So
was
just so I'm clear,
public
response
edit
order
orders.
is wait until everyone speaks? I'm sorry? How does our response work at the end? Okay, gotcha.
Greetings again. As I mentioned previously, I've been down there many times because of many complaints I got. So I'm going to try to solve this without any, I have no financial interest here. Everybody else wants to make money, okay? I don't. I work for free for the people. First of all, the 36-inch sidewalk in the Garden Street lot was built illegally with no waiver at all. If you go to the files, there's no exception to that. So that was totally a false argument to even use. Years back, there was a ramp and a porch on the north side of this building, and that could have been left there, and it would be all solved. And if you people want to have your 4 extra seats, build a porch on the north side like the other units have, and you're done. And you're not blocking any path at all. Very simple to do. Right now, there's porches off of A, B, C, I think, and maybe D. They could have a complete long porch or a porch off the building, and you've got 4 extra seats. What happened with this 4-foot, 48-inch access ramp is, and I saw the video just yesterday, the owner said, I spent a lot of money and 75 feet of ramp so he could get access from the Garden Street or the Pony parking lot to the funk zone. He's acting like he's going to do this all for the funk zone and, by the way, for his own business. And the rule said 48 inches was required, okay? Now, Don has brought up lately that the zoning department has changed their mind in allowing 4 seats outside. I want to read from you what was on the original plan, and I'm not arguing that the 4 is now allowed, but this is not the original plan that was accepted. It says, there may be a maximum of 9 inside seats and no outside seats. There should be no unauthorized additional seating provided beyond what is shown on this permit. Now, that was what was on the permit, okay? And 2 or 3 times, they've put chairs out there in violation of this, and until they get caught, they don't do anything. This place has had over 9 violations that are still pending. They had violations of the changing of tenants. They had violations of all sorts of stuff, and none of this has been taken care of. And to me, this is an example of what goes on in this city. The landlords violate the permits. They don't get permits. And then when they get caught, they come here and complain, oh, this is a hardship to me. I'll lose money. Okay? They shouldn't be doing this stuff illegally in the first place.
30 seconds, if you're.
Okay, I'm going to have to say something. The appellate is only supposed to have 5 minutes. And if you didn't stop her,
I'm just going by the guideline. I'm sorry.
what's the guideline for the appellant?
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
No, the appellant.
In the original presentation?
Yes. It's 5 minutes. No one stopped that, and I didn't say a word.
You can, yeah, it's at my discretion. You can proceed.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm not going to be too long. I try to be to the point, but if
I
they're
was
not
just trying to remind you of an ending point, not that you had to end.
okay.
So please proceed.
Excuse me for that. So the ramp was supposed to be 40 inches totally. Now, they want to all of a sudden put chairs there and saying it's an existing condition. Those things called existing conditions have to do with physical barriers such as a ravine or a drop-off or something, not a condition that they in the first place caused. They decided to take out the ramp and the patio on the north side and make 48 inches and promise it'll be 40-inch ramp, and now they're saying, oh, it's an existing condition. Please let us put chairs there. They cannot block a 40-inch path. And before I'm done, I'm going to ask you to read this one statement. But let me try to hurry up here. Okay, I've mentioned the path on the north side, and I don't know why we just can't have a patio there. And again, if you allow this, that means any developer can come in here and say, I'm going to follow the rules and have a 40-inch path of travel, and then I'm going to put chairs there and not have a 40-inch path of travel, and that's going to come back to bite us. Just like the problem with the Sandman, now there's other people now saying we want the same break that you guys gave them. And so I would like you to read this because this is a code. And I want this to make sure it's in the record. This is from the Federal ADA and the California Building Code 11B 202.3.1.
Okay, I'll let you read it into the record real quick.
You to read.
Hold on. What is, I have no, this is a piece of paper that you've handed me. I have no idea where this is from. So
Okay,
I can't
fine.
read it
I'll
as a
read it.
kind of official record.
Okay.
Making
I'm
a
visually
comment.
impaired, so I have a hard time reading. Okay. From the Federal ADA law and CBC 11B 202.3.1, and I will say, I'll let the two experts over here tell me if I'm making this up or if this is true, okay? Prohibited reduction in access. An alteration that decreases or has the effect of decreasing the accessibility of a building or facility below the requirements for new construction of at the time of the altercation is prohibited. Not open for suggestion, not open for debate. The 40 inches was the minimum requirement for the path. They want to reduce it. It says right here in the law it's prohibited. Is that correct, ladies?
Yes, that is a correct assertion.
Thank you. So
Thank
I
you
see
for your
no reason
comments.
how you can now say, oh, we're going to decide. But I think.
We haven't decided anything. Thank you for your comments.
No, I said, you're going to make a decision. I said,
We will, yes,
okay.
thank you.
And I want to tell Miss Sherry that if you just put something on the porch in the back, you can have your 4 seats.
All right, are there any other public comments? With that, then we'll go to board questions or comments. Are there any other comments?
Yeah, I wanted to point out, let you guys know this, just for your own safety. When I was there Saturday morning, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, we've closed public comment.
And then the next would be questions from the board to the appellant.
Okay, do we have any questions to the board from the appellant?
I have a comment also. While I was there Saturday, this last Saturday at 8 in the morning, there was no customers there, but there were a lot of homeless out there. There were several behind your place in the back where the accessible parking was. There was about 4 back there, and then when I was driving up on Garden near the weeds, there was a whole bunch over there. So I just want to tell you guys that.
Are there any other questions from the board? Okay, are there any questions for the staff from the board? Okay, with that, then, hold on. So we need a motion to, now this would be to uphold the decision of the building authority, right? A motion, okay, so we need a motion to uphold the decision of the building authority. Do I have a motion?
Before you do,
something?
before you call the vote,
Yeah.
do we have a chance to respond to public comment before you make a vote? Or do we do it during the, under discussion after the vote and the motion?
That's
then make a
actually up
motion?
to the board. If,
I don't have a problem with it.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have.
Yeah, I just had a
quick-
couple of,
Actually, there was one other thing, just with your analogy towards the restaurant, that I would ask a question about too, but.
Okay.
Go ahead if you had.
just, I wanted to answer a couple of, to respond to a couple of the comments that were made by the gentleman.
Okay, if you could
that spoke.
keep it brief.
The planning did not change their minds on allowing the outside seating. I guess I didn't make that really clear. The only reason we did not apply for seating initially was because we needed to get a permit to build, and they hadn't picked out their outside dining chairs. We just decided, let's just get a permit. We were always allowed on this, and under the zoning ordinance too. I just want to
think
make
it's our
sure that,
understanding that, based on what staff has told us today, that the zoning is not an issue, that we
okay, I just,
understand what the.
he said that.
He may
so
not have the information that the rest of us have.
I wanted to
and
clarify
anyway,
for
it's-
him
Yeah,
too,
okay,
so.
appreciate that.
And then something about 9 violations or something, or ongoing violations other than this one on this property, none that I know of. And,
On the current property owner?
yeah, on this property, the property
Or the
owner
current-
has,
or is it somebody that leases the property? Do you?
no, they lease,
Okay.
there's no violations on the property that I know of. Except this one. There are violations on the adjacent property that we have been trying to resolve, and we're almost done resolving,
Oh,
but
we
they're
can ask-
completely
yeah, staff,
irrelevant.
You have a comment?
I don't believe that we can comment on that without actually researching in that.
Right.
So
right.
there are I mean, in the documentation, there were open violations which precipitated the construction
And
there.
And as a
But it's-
reminder, if we don't get a motion, if we don't make a motion, we could carry this. to a
Right, your
meeting
options are
or-
to accept, amend, or deny
Right.
the standing
So,
motion.
So anyway,
And
that,
then just a couple of really
ahead.
quick points. There was a comment made about why we didn't keep the existing ramp on the north. It was partially on the neighbor's property. We could not use it. It was, it didn't meet the slope requirements. It wasn't wide enough. It was impossible from a code standpoint to use that ramp, and that ramp was illegal. So we had to take it down and come up with a
you
solution
know
that
right
was.
off the top of your head what the setback is on the north? Just from the
Well,
building
you
to the
can
property,
see
it's like
that the property is wider at the front, and then the building skews on the property. So as it gets back here, you don't have even 36 inches.
Right.
So that, segues into the reason why we didn't do seating back here. There's no room on the other side of the building, and there's no room because of the path of travel here, because of the parking, and there's no room because there's the parking dimension between the two noses of the cars. We can't do that either. So
Okay.
there was just no room. Believe me, if there was any other place we could
Did
have
that,
put it.
did that address his comments?
The questions, she should be addressing your questions,
No,
not
I know, but
necessarily questions
she
of
said she
general,
wanted
of
to-
the,
She wanted to.
Yeah, thank you
yeah.
for letting
yes.
me.
Okay, and then just my one question using, and this is kind of this is a discussion. We have to do that to make a decision.
Yes,
But
we do.
using your analogy to a restaurant and using an analogy to a restaurant and getting in and out of a restaurant, you're saying that this is like a restaurant and that we would only have to provide 36 inches for a path of egress, which I don't necessarily think is true, but can you comment on that? How you think that this space, because it serves this unit as well as other areas, is the same as a restaurant? We don't normally have people
I didn't say
coming
that.
through a restaurant
Exiting.
into a parking lot.
No, that's not what I imply. I mean, I didn't mean to imply that.
Okay,
I apologize.
so I just wanted to be clear on that this, to me, is not at all like a restaurant.
No,
It's
my
like
point
putting
was is-
chairs in an exit pathway.
No, my point was simply that if this was interior space and the whole deck was an interior hallway, and like you said, I did not provide, and I could do that, occupancy analysis for the egress that would show the exit component width for you and answer that question. But it made me think that if this whole building went to here instead of here, in other words, if the building came out to here, and my exiting, my occupancy was such that my exit component width was only required to be 36 inches, we wouldn't have an issue.
Right.
It's only
But,
because
yeah,
if the
it's-
walkway
no,
is
it's-
required to be
it's-
48.
yeah. Okay, so then, I guess that's it. If there aren't any, if the board has no more questions for staff and the appellate,
Do I get to say anything else or no?
No.
no, we're done. Sorry. You had a good comments, though. So, I need a motion to accept, amend, or deny.
Can you state the motion again?
It would be a motion to accept, amend, or deny the denial, or the,
Correct, to uphold the denial of the
right, yeah,
exception,
okay.
yeah.
Did you catch that?
No. And
Yes.
I need to know the
Can you-
details. What is
Sure.
it?
So your motion would be to accept the decision of the building official, to
What's the
uphold?
decision of the building
The
official?
we did not support that. That's what the report said, that we did not support the reduction of the required accessible path of travel. We required the maximum 40, or the 48 inches. So
Let me read you what the building official wrote. Staff feels that it is important to note the implications of approving this appeal. If this request for a reduction in the minimum required accessible path of travel width is approved because of a 2015 existing condition, then staff expects the building designers will design compliant accessible paths of travel at the time of an initial tenant permit application. And after final inspection approval, submit another permit application with a hardship request due to existing conditions that were created by the initial tenant improvement permit. Staff believes that this outcome would circumvent the intended accessible path of travel requirements of the code, which is why Andrew did not support this.
But it would only be a motion to agree with the appeal, or with the
With the-
denial.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's a motion to agree with the denial of
Of the
the
board?
appeal. I know, maybe we should write it down.
I'd like to continue this. I'm not ready
Oh,
to make a decision.
Okay.
you have to make motion.
The net result is it stays
Yeah,
at
you need to make
48.
Well, no, you have to,
Yeah, is that what this is
you
saying?
make a motion to continue it.
Okay,
So the motion would be to mandate that they continue to maintain the 48 inches.
that's what I want,
Oh, okay.
okay? That's what, I was trying to get that clear. Nobody would say it in in this short sentence. Okay, thank you.
I thought it was two.
Yeah, that's,
Well, I mean,
gonna have it-
what he's saying is that he's not supportive of the applicant's request. He's not supportive of their appeal. He's denying their appeal.
doesn't want it to.
And that's what you wanna vote on,
reduce
right?
the-
Right.
You don't want to
the
continue the
walkway.
meeting?
No, I don't want to continue things, no.
Okay.
So they're meaning, 1 foot off, it would take, to reduce it, would reduce it by a foot of width. Just to make sure I understand.
Correct, that was their request.
Okay, we have a motion? Was that a motion? Was that,
So it could be, the emotion could be to uphold the building official's
decision?
decision.
So,
Okay, I'll make a motion, yes, to uphold.
I'll
the-
make that motion.
Okay, again, go ahead.
Support Andrew's decision.
okay,
No reduction of width.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, here's the-
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I assumed because she only made a motion.
Do you want to state that you've seconded the motion?
Second.
There is no other person to do it, so.
Okay.
Just to clarify, Ken made the motion to uphold the building official's decision. Bonnie seconded,
Correct.
and the vote is,
3-0.
3-0.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, folks.
So is there a way that we can try to get something that does work for the outside? Like, how do we go about and,
I'll talk to you about that.
okay.
Not with us, but.
Yeah, not with them.
Okay.
So then you need to adjourn the
Okay,
meeting?
so with that, I'd like to give it back to the chair. Who knows what he's doing?
Yeah, I think that place has a really strong pull, and it's really constrained.
Okay, we're still in session, so we do need to adjourn the meeting.
At this point, we are going to adjourn the meeting. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.